So, good morning or good evening, as the case may be. Rosh Bash, Evari Bash. My name's Rachel Harrell. I'm the language coordinator at Zahra Institute, and I'm very happy to welcome you to the third installment of our Fall Brown Bag series. So, quick preview of upcoming events. In 2 weeks' time, I hope we'll all reconvene here for a presentation by Joanna Bochinska of Jagiellonian University. It's titled Between Whisper and Revolution, Kurdish Heritage, Art, and Literature. So we look forward to that. You can always find out about upcoming events on the Institute website. And we do post recordings of these talks a couple of days after they happen. So if you had to step out early, you can always find out what you missed or an earlier presentation. And now I'm very pleased to introduce today's speaker, Michael Chyet. Dr. Chyet currently teaches Kurdish at Missouri State University, although he's speaking to us today from the Washington, D.C. area. He recently retired from a long-time position as cataloger of Middle Eastern languages at the Library of Congress. He was senior broadcast editor of the Kurdish service of the Voice of America and a professor of Kurdish at the University of Paris and the Washington Kurdish Institute. He's perhaps best known and widely appreciated as the author of the Kurdish English Dictionary, Ferhanga Biruski. Its second edition appeared in January of 2020. He's currently working on a third expanded edition. He's published numerous articles on Kurdish and Middle Eastern folklore and about Kurdish linguistics. His particular interests include the folklore genres of riddles, proverbs, folktales, and romances. And today, Dr. Chyet will be speaking on managing variation, a methodology for standardizing Kurdish. He'll speak for about 40 minutes, and then we'll open the floor to questions for the remaining time. So, welcome, Dr. Chyet.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. B'khair hatin. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see this? Yes? So I'm going to try. Yes. Now the full screen is. So first I'm going to give the PowerPoint presentation, and then I have some updates, some more recent stuff that I've been doing. So for me, this is the first time I'm giving a talk since I retired from the Library of Congress. So I can now dispense with the disclaimer that these are my own comments. They do not represent my employer, because I'm my employer, so they do represent me. So let me begin with this is a quote from the Kurdish poet Shukri Fazli that I begin all of my endeavors with. It's in Central Kurdish, alias Sorani. Seretai ish hamu yakbune, awish nabe, heta herbrine teledul dabe, sareji neke. The basis of all work is unity, and this cannot be until you have healed every wound in your heart. So here we go. So in situations where one dialect of, this is, when I say one, I'm talking about Kurdish here. When one dialect of Kurdish presents multiple forms to choose from, the forms that exist in the other dialects should be considered in order to calibrate the dialects, that is, to bring them closer together. So these are my suggestions. So first of all, I want to point out 5 major differences between Kurmanji and Central Kurdish. Kurmanji has nouns that have let me start again. Kurmanji nouns have 2 genders, masculine and feminine, and 2 cases, direct or nominative and oblique. The Central Kurdish of Slemani and Kirkuk has neither gender nor case, whereas in Hawler and in Mukrian, there are still some traces of both gender and case. Each of the 2 dialects forms the passive voice of the verb differently. So if we take the example of the sentence, the boy was seen, in Kurmanji, we would say kur hat diten, with using the verb hatin as an auxiliary verb plus the infinitive diten. Whereas in Sorani, in Central Kurdish, you would say kuraka bindra. You use the present stem bin and you add the suffix ra. Ra for the past tense, in the present it would be dabindriet. So it's a very different way of forming the passive. The Kurmanji one is uses an auxiliary verb plus infinitive. The Central Kurdish uses an internal. So you use the present stem plus a suffix. Kurmanji has no definite article, the word the in English, al in Arabic, whereas Central Kurdish has a postpositive definite article, a ka in the singular and a kan in the plural. So for instance, dest, hand, they would say dastaka, meaning the hand, and dastakan, the hands. Kurmanji has two sets of pronouns, direct case, as to el, emhun el, and an oblique case, min, ta, and then el splits into masculine we and feminine we, me, we, and wan. Whereas Central Kurdish has one set of independent pronouns, min, tu, el, ema, ewa, awan, and a set of pronominal suffixes, it, e, man, tanyan. So the independent pronouns of Central Kurdish correspond to the direct case of Kurmanji, and the set of pronominal suffixes of Central Kurdish correspond to the oblique case of Kurmanji. Broadly, I mean, there are certain specific exceptions, but that's the general situation. And then Kurmanji has a separate future tense, as a babinam, in Behdini it would be as de binam, distinct from the present tense, as de binam, I see. By contrast, Central Kurdish uses the present tense for both present and future. Dabinam, I see or I will see. So now I'm going to give some examples of situations in which one dialect has variation and the other has a single form, and how to choose. My suggestion for choosing a form to bring the two dialects closer together. So in Kurmanji, the present indicative of the present tense begins with the prefix de, debinam, I see, defroshim, I sell. In Central Kurdish, there's variation. In Mukrian and in Arbil, Hawler, they have de, dabinam, and defroshim, whereas in Sleimani and Kirkuk and in Sina, Sanandaj, they have the form abinam, efroshim. So by choosing de rather than for Central Kurdish as the standard, it enhances intelligibility between Kurmanji and Central Kurdish. So dabinam, to a Kurmanji speaker who hearing dabinam, he or she should understand what they're talking about. And actually, in the Kurmanji dialect of Elbistan in Marash, they actually say dabinam there too, rather than dabinam. So that's one. Compound verbs. So there is variation in Kurmanji between whether you should, when you have a verb with a prefix such as ru, hil, da, wer, etc., whether that de for the present tense should come at the beginning, such as durunum for I sit, or between the prefix and the present stem, rudenum. So in Central Kurdish, you only have the de in the middle, in between the prefix and the present stem. So whereas in Kurmanji you could say rudanim or dirunam, depending on what region you're from. In Central Kurdish, da danishim or da anishim is the only possibility. So I am proposing making the situation that is shared by Kurmanji and Central Kurdish the standard. So Rudanim, Werdegrim, Hildegrim in Kurmanji, Da Danishim, Werdegrim, Haldegrim for Sorani. So in lexicology, vocabulary, Kurmanji has a great many words for broom. And each one of them comes from a different language and is a piece of the history of the Kurdish people. So you have Melkes, which is from Arabic Miknasa, Kenosha, which is actually, Kenosha is cognate, comes from the Aramaic word or Syriac word, which is cognate with the Arabic word Miknasa. Both Avlek, which is used in Dersim, and Siqavel, which is quite widespread, meaning specifically a large broom used for sweeping out a barn. Those both come from the Armenian word avel. Then there's bermalk for sweeping. I guess the idea is in front of the house is where they would sweep. Shijing, and I'm not sure where that comes from. Sivnik, not sure where that comes from. Sizik, also I'm not sure. Jarifk, which is common in Behdinan, looks like the Persian word jarub, but whether it actually is cognate with that or not, I'm not sure anybody can say for sure. And then there's the word gezi, which is quite widespread. Now, gezi happens to have cognates in Central Kurdish, Zazaki, and Haurami. So in Central Kurdish, gasik or gisik, Zazaki, gazi, and in Haurami, gizi. So it seems to me that gezi is the best candidate for the standard term for broom in Kurmanji, based on on all of that. But I'm not saying that we're going to throw away or disregard the other words. I'll come to that a little bit later. So the word the infinitive of the verb to say in Kurmanji is goten. In Central Kurdish, there's wutin or witin in Sleimani and Kirkuk, kutin in Mukrian, so Mehabad and that area, and goten in Arbil. So my proposal is to make goten the standard for both Kurmanji and Sorani. Now, the argument can be made that wutin is similar to the Zazaki form vatene and the Haurami form wate, which is no doubt true. But I mean, there are people who would say that for that reason, wutin should be the standard. All I can tell you is that, for instance, Bakhtiar Ali, the novelist, uses guten in his writing rather than wutin. But it's not always as simple as choosing one form among many which agrees with the single form in the other dialect. Let's look at the past participle. So in Kurmanji, you take the infinitive, ditin, dan, and you chop off the n ending, and you replace that with e. So for ditin, you'd have dt, seen. For dan, you'd have dai. And Badini, it would just be dai rather than dai as the past participle given. And whereas in Central Kurdish, there are no less than 3 regional variants. in Arbil, so for the verbs khwardin, to eat, and dan, to give, Arbil, you'd have khwardi and dai, which is very much a continuation of what you have in Kurmanji. Then you have khwardu and dao in Sleimani and in Mukri. And then in Sina, khwardig and dag, and that continues on into Kalhuri, into southern Kurdish. So what do I say here? The khwardi dai of Arbil Hawler is perceived by most cultivated Sorani speakers as backward. Imposing it on the robust written tradition represented by the forms khwardu and dao might cause just the sort of divisive backlash that we are seeking to avoid. I also want to point out that because khwardu and dao are used not only in Sleimani and Kirkuk, Germian, but also in Mukrian. So I would say the vast majority of Central Kurdish speakers use this form. So what I am suggesting is that we simply allow the situation as it is today to continue, where Kurmanji has Khwari and Dai, but Central Kurdish has Khwardu and Dao. There's an English saying, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Then there are all Kurdish dialects and Persian have two forms for the verb to see. So in Kurmanji, we have ditin as the infinitive, and with the present stem bin, debinum. So Sorani, you have ditin and binin, both exist. But in Zazaki, it's diayish, din, present stem vineno. In Haurami, di, present stem ween. In Persian, didan, present stem mibinam. So it's only in Central Kurdish that binin as the infinitive replaces ditin. So they would have a past tense binim, which exists side by side with ditim, for I saw. Now, I have recently been made aware that there are certain Kurmanji dialects in Derka Hemko region of Rojava where you can say binan, but that's a marginal regional variation. What I'm suggesting is the ditin be the standard form for both Central Kurdish and Kurmanji. So when it comes to vocabulary standardization and teaching Kurdish, we have Kurmanji, we have Behdini, that is Southern Kurmanji, which is transitional to Central Kurdish. And the role of Behdini is important because it's a bridge between the more northern Kurmanji dialects and Sorani. One could make the argument that Mukriani, some dialects of Central Kurdish, are similarly a bridge to Kurmanji. And I would say Mukriani and Hawleri. So here are some examples of vocabulary differences between the three. So beautiful, in Kurmanji, you can say badao and spehi, and of course there are other words, dalal, etc. Behdini, jwan, and in Central Kurdish, jwan. Inside, hundir in Kurmanji, jor in Behdini, jur in Central Kurdish. Hungry, birchi in Kurmanji, birsi in both Behdini and Central Kurdish. To send, Shandin in Kurmanji, Behdini, Hinartin, Central Kurdish, Nardin, and in Hawler, even Hinardin. A paternal uncle, one's father's brother, in Kurmanji, Ap, though mom is also known. In Behdini and in Central Kurdish, mom is the normal word. To learn, Hinbun in the north. Of course, there's also regional variations such as Hevoten and Hukren in some places. But Ferbun is shared by Behdini and Central Kurdish. So a couple of more detailed comments about these words. So Juan means beautiful in Behdini and in Central Kurdish, but young in Kurmanji. So the Persian word javan also means young, and this is an Indo-European root, which we see in the English word young, German jung, Latin juvenis, which is where we get joven in Spanish, jeune in French, giovano in Italian, and even Russian juni. That is quite a widespread Indo-European root with the meaning of young. So the meaning of beautiful in Behdini and in Central Kurdish is a later development. And of course, young and beautiful, the connection between the two is not surprising. But the problem here is if in a broadcast, let's say somebody's using the word Juan, and some listeners are understanding by that young and other listeners are understanding by that beautiful, then they're hearing the same thing and understanding different things, and that's problematic. So other words for young that are possible, jahil and jahil exist in Kurmanji from an Arabic word which originally means ignorant, but you'll find it in Kurdish riddles in the meaning of young. And this form also exists in Mukri, jahil with the lami kurs, also with the meaning of young. So there is a word that's shared between Kurmanji and Central Kurdish. Elsewhere in Central Kurdish, the Turkish word genç is used, which you'll hear occasionally in Bakur also. Then we have another case, jor jur, which means inside in Behdini and Central Kurdish, but upwards or above in Kurmanji. So there again, if somebody is telling you to go jor and find something, are they telling you to go up or to go in? It's from the point of view of understanding, it's problematic when you have one word that has two different meanings. So another way to say up or above in Behdini is silal, and in Central Kurdish, serawa. So the ideas that I'm presenting in this paper are designed to provide linguistically valid reasons for preferring a particular form over others. The methodology I'm proposing can provide solutions for standardizing Kurmanji and Central Kurdish by comparing them with each other, doing research, and including looking into the other Kurdistani languages and dialects, choosing one of the existing forms with an eye to bringing the two dialects of Kurmanji and Central Kurdish in line with one another. This may look fine on paper, but will the Kurds themselves find these suggestions palatable, and will they actually adopt them? So remember I said that I didn't want people to throw out all the other words for brooms. So local dialects are the hallmark of a living language. If my suggestion were adopted, I would encourage people in Slemani and Kirkuk to continue using Witten and Benin in their spoken language, and those in Mukrian to keep on saying Kutin and Ditin. However, in formal speech and writing, I would suggest using the forms Goten and Ditin. As for the words for broom, I'm not advocating discarding the dialect words bermalk, avlek, melkes, etc. I would hope that people would continue using them and passing them on to the next generation, which of course means speaking to your children in Kurdish, which is what I would be hope would be happening more and more rather than less and less, as well as knowing the standard word gezi. This would approximate the diglossic situation in Arabic, whereby everyone speaks a local dialect, but the standard written language is largely the same from the Maghrib to the Fertile Crescent, or in Kurdish terms, from Adiyaman to Acre, or from Soran to Sanandaj. When Kurmanji speakers know the Behdini word, they'll have an easier time learning, or at least understanding, Central Kurdish. In teaching Kurmanji, it's desirable to teach students of Kurmanji 2 words for certain things. A Kurmanji word widely known by Kurmanji speakers, and a Behdini word, a Behdini and Hakkari word, which is often close to the Central Kurdish word. So for instance, for a father's brother, paternal uncle, up and mom, for to send Shandin and Hanartin. Up and Shandin are quite widespread. Mam and Hanartin are transitional to their Central Kurdish equivalents, Mam and Nardin or Hanardin. And Hanardin is also found in Southern Kurdish, in Kalhuri. So in this brief discourse, I have tried to give a taste of what is involved in standardizing a language. Several factors must be taken into account: the linguistic data of a wide number of dialects, the sociolinguistic information, as well as a realistic expectation of what forms would be acceptable to their intended users. Now, I have continued to work on this since delivering this paper originally. So I have some new data that I would like to share with you today. First of all, to hear in Kurdish, what a Kurdish school child should know about his or her own language. So here I have the word for to say in Kurmanji, Central Kurdish, Kalhuri, Zazaki, Haurami, and Persian. And then I break it up into how they're related to each other. So in Kurmanji, by far the widest, most widely known word for to hear is behisten, present stem debhism, but you'll also hear debhism and even debhem in some regions. Also, sahkeren is very common in Gherzan, so Misr, Kurtalan, Batman, Hazo, Kozluk, and in Rojava, Hiskeren. And I think that sahkeren and hiskeren are actually the same word with a metathesis. Well, let me just finish. Guhlebun is common in Behdini. Min guhle debit, I hear something. When I first visited in Kurdistan of San Diego, when I started visiting the newly arrived Kurdish immigrants from Behdinan in 1993, I guess it was, they would say to me all the time, Min shnuka gulebu. So I never heard that before. I'm hearing it for the first time. When I first heard it, it was just like, what is the Mijnuka gulebu? I didn't know what, and then they slowed it down and broke it down for me. Min Januka gulebu, which is just like Central Kurdish Gwe lebun, Gwem le debate. That's my ear is to it, literally. Bistin, cognate with Bistin and Kurmanji also exists. There's a very common expression, Hualedempti bibistea, may God hear it from your mouth. In other words, from your mouth to God's ear. So Gwelebun Hualedempti bibistea, and also in Sina and so Ardalan, let's say, Genautin and Geneftin is also very common. And then in Kelhuri, Southern Kurdish, Geneftin, there's a great deal of variation in the forms, but it's clearly the same word as this Geneftin word. And in Zazaki also, Eshnawitene or Ashnawitene is the same word. And also in Haurami, Ejnie or Ejnewiye. And they also have Gosh Chobye, which is basically a calque of Gwelebun. So in Persian, the basic word for to hear is shanidam with the present stem shnav, mishnavam. There's the opening line of Jalaluddin Rumi's Masnavi, Bishno inai chun shikoyat mikonad, as judayi ha hikayat mikonad. So Bishno, this shanidan, mishnavam is cognate with Jneften, Shneften, Eshnawiten, and Ejnawi. It's all the same word, but it's conspicuously absent from Kurmanji. So the Sehkirin and Hiskirin originally means to feel. So if we look at Turkish duymak, in Turkish you have two words to hear, işitmek, and much more commonly duymak, but duymak originally means to feel. And there's an interesting parallel to that also in Italian. Sentire originally means to feel, like duymak does, but it has basically replaced udire, just as duymak has largely replaced ishitmek in Turkish. So here we see a parallel with what we have in Italian and in Turkish, with this word meaning to hear, but originally coming from word meaning feeling, sensing. So now I've divided these words into the cognates. So Kurmanji has Bihistin and Bistin. Gwelebun, Guhlebun, and Gosh Chobye, that's one unit. And Shanidan, Jnotin, Shnef, Ejnawiye, Eshnawitena, that's all one word. So it would, a Kurdish school child with a good education in Kurdish would come away knowing all of this. But this also gives you an idea of how complex, this is just one word. I mean, this sort of complex situation could be brought forth for just about any common word, not just verbs. So now, where to go? Oh, here we are. So here are some more examples. This is stuff which I'm just starting to work on now. I'm just sort of assembling the information. So the word for tomato and eggplant, Kurmanji bajane sor, bajan sork, but there are also shamik, Ferengi, Stamboli. In Central Kurdish, bayinjani sur. And then the bayinjan word also does duty for eggplant by what the British call aubergine. Bajani reshk, bajan reshk, bayinjani resh. So the English word, there is no one single word in English either. Eggplant is common in North America. Aubergine, which is the French word, is common in Great Britain. And in the English of India, they say brinjal, and both aubergine and brinjal are from that the same word that gives us bajan, Persian bademjan, Turkish patlıcan. So some more words. To swim. Kurmanji has an amazing number of words for a landlocked country. It has an amazing number of words for to swim. Ajnekirin, ashberikirin, sobekarikerin, melekirin, or melevanikerin. And when I say sobekarikerin, there's also sobaikerin, sobeberi. There's a great deal of variation within each one of these. So in Central Kurdish, melekirdin. So melekirdin, that's clearly the same word, but how widely spread is melekirin or melevanikerin in Bakur, for instance? It may exist in Kurmanji, but that doesn't mean that every Kurmanji speaker would understand it if they heard it. So the forms for sister. Khushk in Kurmanji. Khushk, khuishk, khwe, khaying, khang. In Central Kurdish, khushk. So if we made khushk the standard in Kurmanji, that would be the closest to Central Kurdish khushk. Spider, and this is not exhaustive, but in Kurmanji you have both da piroshk, teven pirk, petavent, and I think there are a couple others too, but da piroshk and da pirochke in Central Kurdish are clearly cognate. And the idea of a spider having to do with a woman is, you'll see that a lot in folklore around the world, like riddles about spiders. Very, very often it's like a woman spinning something. So dapir is a grandmother. So it's like it's a little grandmother. That's what a spider is, dapiroshk. And teven pirk, again, pirk is there, meaning a woman or an old woman. And teven is a loom. So it has to do with the spinning. Uncle, we actually already discussed, mom and ap. Mom exists in both Kurmanji and Central Kurdish. To speak, boy, oh boy, does Kurmanji have a lot. Achaften, heyevin, ksekerin, in Kars in particular, though I've been told also that it's known in the area around Diyarbakir. Kazikirin, in Karakochan, Elazığ, that area. Sterlin is very common in Mardin. And Mejuldan, both of these, Mejuldan and Sterlin, are both from the Arabic root shagala. And the Turoyo, the Neo-Aramaic Syriac language spoken in Mardin also, their word for to speak is from this root. Mijrola, they say. And then Kheberdan. And Shorkarin, it seems to be common in Reha, in Urfa region. So we have all of these. In Central Kurdish, you have Ksekirdin. Some people say Ksan Kirdin, and Dwan. So Ksekirin exists in both, but Ksekirin is relatively regional in Kurmanji, whereas it's the norm in Central Kurdish. Boy or son, Kur and Lao both exist in Kurmanji, Kurrik, Lawik. Lao exists in Central Kurdish, but it usually means like youth. Like, for instance, there's in Bashur in Iraqi Kurdistan, there's one of the government departments is Berewa Barayati, something Lawan, meaning it's the Department of Youth Education, that sort of stuff. But Kur certainly exists in both. Dog, Kuchik, in Dersim it's Kuti, but the word Sa also exists, particularly in Behdinan, but beyond that. And in Central Kurdish, it's Sag. This is the famous Spaka word. people are familiar with that. There are very few words that we know from Median, the ancient Median language, but Herodotus told us that their word for dog was spaka, which the Persian word today is sag, and it is assumed that it went something like spaka to swaka to swaga to saga to saga in Persian. And so, I mean, all of this is what Iranian linguists reconstruct. This is how it went. You can also see this in Turkish, like the word iyi. It started with edgü, and then it became egü, and then egi, and then ayi, and then ayi, and then iyi. So I mean, these sort of changes over centuries, sort of like melting down, are fairly fairly common. But to see the spaka word in Kurdish is sort of exciting to some people. Anyway, words for stone. So in Kurmanji, kavir is the most widespread. Of course, there's kuch also, but kavir is the most common word for stone, which is probably cognate with the Slavic word kamen. Because we know a lot of times a va in Kurmanji is from an original ma, and for R's and N's to switch off is not surprising. Ber, particularly in Behdinan, is common for a small stone, and this is the standard word in Central Kurdish is berd, but the word ber must have been more widely known in Kurmanji at one time, because we have games such as Nehberk, 9 stones. Even if the word ber is forgotten in certain regions, they do have the word Nehberk. And similarly, so to sleep, raketin, nivistin is no, it's in Behdinan and in Hakkari for to sleep. Largely unknown to people in the north, but they do know Niveen, Jehu Niveen, for bedding, a bed. So sometimes there's another form of the word that is preserved. And Nivistin is clearly cognate with the Central Kurdish Nustin, for to sleep. Razan, the difference between Raketin and Razan is the difference between uyumak and yatmak, right? Razan is really to lie down, go to bed. And then once you're lying down, then you fall asleep, and that's raket. And the noun chaun doesn't have, which means both a dream and sleep, does not have a verb in Kurmanji, but it does in Central Kurdish. Nustin and chautin. But that doesn't seem to have generated a verb in Kurmanji. Then verbs for to send. So Shandin, which has a regional variant, Shiandin in some regions. Hinartin, which is not widely known in the north, but is cognate with Central Kurdish Nardin. Hawleir has Hinardin, but the neologisms for export and import. So export is henarde, and henarde, and import is hawirde. Both of these are from hawirdin is another way of saying henan, to bring. So you bring something in or you take it out. So And henarde, you'll see it in, at least in journalistic Kurmanji too. But I don't know how widely spread it is known. And then rekerin and verekerin is another common way of saying to send, particularly in Behdinan, but I think beyond. And in Central Kurdish, in addition to Nardin, there's also rewane kirdin, meaning to send. And then to play, so in Kurmanji, listin, leistin, lehistin, and yarikerin, which in Zacho is garbled into rarikerin. In Central Kurdish, yarikerin and bazikerin both exist. But yarikerin is not particularly widely known. So you can't just say, well, it exists in both Kurmanji and Sorani, so let's use that, because it's listin or leistin is known everywhere. Yarikerin is much more limited in scope. Then for shirt, a man's shirt, kras means both a man's shirt and a woman's dress. And if you think of the English words shirt and skirt, which are from the same word originally, we're not, Kurdish are not the only one that has both meanings for that. Gomlek is obviously from Turkish gömlek. Ishlik is common in Anatolian Kurmanji. So in Haymana, Polatlı, south of Ankara, Kırşehir, that area, Konya, that area. Kras exists both in Kurmanji and in Sorani. And some other words that I'm thinking about adding, there are so many words. There are, the joke about like mushrooms after a rainstorm? Well, the number of Kurmanji words for mushroom is like mushrooms after a rainstorm. Just about every village has its own version of that. Kufkarek, Karkevik, Fikaroshk, etc., etc. And the animal bat, Yarasa in Turkish, there are several words, and within each word, there's lots and lots of variations, like barchemik, balchemik, pirchemek, and that's only one word. There's chekchekile, there's chill. So these are just sort of works in progress, things just to give you an idea of what this involves. And I want people to also be aware of this, the Kurdish romanization table, which you'll see in my dictionary as well. But this is what I created for the Library of Congress. And it has one thing that needs correcting, updating. The ya, which can be both the long vowel e and the consonant ya, should not have the two dots under it. In Arabic it does, but in Persian and in Kurdish it doesn't. And I was not able to get them to change that before I retired, but it has been updated in my dictionary. So, but the point is, there is a simple one-on-one correspondence between the Roman, Cyrillic, and Arabic. Roman and Arabic are the most relevant today, but part of standardization is also the one-on-one correspondence. And I mean, in my work cataloging Kurdish material during my career, I saw early on that there was a need for this. But then in my dictionary, where every head word is side by side in the Latin and the Arabic orthography, I really became very sensitized to the one-on-one correspondence. One-on-one correspondence means that you could program a computer to flip from one to the other, theoretically. So I don't know if that was 40 minutes or not, but
That was great. Thank you so much. And we still have some time for questions, so I think we should encourage people. You can write in the chat and I'll read it, or if you want to raise your hand and ask the question directly, both options exist.
Let me just say that I just put the link to the standard orthography table in the chat. It's readily available to anybody. So, Keremkin, go ahead and Luea.
Questions, anyone? Well, there's, yeah, Brusque, why don't you go ahead?
Spas, burası gerek enteresan bu. My name is Brusk. I teach Kurdish Kurmanji in Zahra Institute. Yeah, it was actually amazing. But for the standardization, I think Kurds don't look at standardization as one of the priorities. In Rojava, people speak Kurmanji. Now in the University of Rojava for Kurdish, Sorani and Zazaki are mandatory, but in Kurdish schools are just in Kurmanji. In Bakur, actually, they are Kurmanji and they are sympathy for Zazaki. But the place where there should be a good discussion about standardization, I think it is Iraqi Kurdistan or Bashur. Until now, they have a very big conflict between the Sorani speaker and Bahdini, or what's called Kurmanji speaker. They have historical problems. They don't understand each other. I have lived 17 years in Norway. They have Bokmål, Nynorsk as two different type of the language. Both are mandatory. But if I look at the Bakur, so many Kurmanji speakers, they support Zazaki. But in Iraqi Kurdistan, it's like with respect to many Sorani speakers, that they think Bahdina or Kurmanji is a threat. And it seems that the government doesn't care about it. Yeah, Badini in one case is a bridge. It sounds romantic, but I think it's not a good case for them. If a person writes a book in Badini, Arabic alphabet or Aramaic alphabet, so a Sorani speaker will not read the book because it's not in Sorani. And a person from Rojava and Bakur cannot read the same book. So they are also in a very, not good situation. And there is a very big debate. I think, or not debate, something that Turkey is against that Kurds in Bashur use Latin alphabet and give more space to Bahdini. As 1 year before, so Kurds from Rojava who were immigrants in Bashur, they were taking Arabic. Suddenly, the government has decided that they will study in Kurdish. It's amazing, but they have chosen Sorani and not Bahdini. Sorry, the Kurds from Rojava, they don't understand Sorani. Both Kurmanji and Sorani are used in here. So I think they have a very internal problem between the Sorani and Bahdini there. It's corruptions. I mean, now there was election. I will not go into politics. So there are much more other priorities. So for them, I think the Kurdish is not a big priority. And also the case is, are we speak about Kurdish languages or Kurdish dialects? I was in England, I was speaking Norwegian with a Danish and Swedish, and they were answering in Swedish and Danish. We could communicate, and there are different languages. And English speakers were like surprised, but Azazaki and Sorani cannot understand. So actually it's too much in this field, but I think respecting to be Kurmanji as it is, Sorani as it is, Zazaki as it is, and making the near is the best way, but the alphabet. Should Kurds do as what Serbia did? that Cyrillic and Latin should be mandatory, something I think Kurdistan, Iraq should do now. But Kurdish, no, it's not a priority at all. This is, from my understanding, especially from Kurdistan, Iraq, because they have all dialects. Thank you for your, sorry if I have spoken a little extra, but thank you. But it was my opinion about the situation, the Kurdish. So Kurdish is not a priority by Kurdish politician.
You bring up a point which I wish that I had mentioned in my talk, and that is another thing that I propose is an educational system for all Kurdish children, not choosing one or the other, but educating all Kurdish children in both Kurmanji and Sorani, in both the Latin and the Arabic alphabet. Now, I'm not ignoring Zazaki and Kalhuri and Haurami. I think that regionally they should also be part of the educational system, and anyone who wants to study in them should also be given that opportunity. But if you grow up with both alphabets and with both dialects, then it's part of you. And then if you have a whole generation of people with a sophisticated knowledge of both dialects, if they merge based on that, rather than somebody trying to impose that on them, that well and good. But yeah, education is part of the issue of standardization, and I have that in this article as it was published, but I didn't include it in the oral part. So thank you for making that point, so that it gave me an opportunity to add that too.
Thank you for you too. Unfortunately, I have to leave. Thank you. Yeah, very much. Zorspas.
Just before you leave, since I live in Kurdistan,
Yeah,
we are using one textbooks in all the region, just to let you know. So the education materials are all the same from Zahra to Hanafin. We don't have
this is not what I have heard about, that they use Badini.
the media. If you look at the TV, for example, the Erbil or the KDP or PUK, they use different probably writing in their media. But in terms of education, since I live here, I can see all materials. So it's the same textbook they teach in Duhok and Semani, just to let you know.
But it's still, I think it still doesn't sound very good, because in Norway they have different language or form of language, and both are mandatory. Sorani is very closed in so Bashur, and also, so you have the opportunity to use both main dialects or languages, what we call, and so you can get benefit from Norway, from Serbia, use both, so that you say no, it's like neglect, that you are trying to make the Badini more Sorani. So it's actually now we're going to the idea of Bas Party, the idea that we don't accept the other. So that you say, I didn't know that in Badinan they use Sorani in the school, but this sounds much worse. So that now Kurdistan Iraq is like getting far. Sorani alphabet, okay, there's no space. I mean, sorry. So I see all Badini, they understand. I'm not from Kurdistan, they understand Sorani. Sorani don't understand. I have met a girl, she has studied Kurdish language and literature from Kurdistan, Iraq. She couldn't understand Kurmanji. But I had a friend from Rojava, he could understand Sorani and Zazaki. So there is a big problem in that, but because there are many other problems there, corruption, electricity, all things, insecurity. So, I mean, the only place where you could find a solution for that is Kurdistan, Iraq, because in Kurdistan, Rojava, all are speaking Kurmanji. In Bakur, unfortunately, they have problem to speak Kurmanji because they speak Turkish. So that you say it's the same textbook sounds romantic, wow. But in Sorani, now you are forcing the Kurds in Badin. So if you look at the Kurdistan in general, sorry, it should be Kurmanji, but I don't say they should be in Kurmanji. But
That's not.
the case in Kurdistan, Iraq is actually chaotic in all things, especially the language. I become very, very disappointed when Sorani speaker don't understand when I speak Kurmanji. You don't. So Kurdish is not a priority in Kurdistan, Iraq. It's like Soranization is the first priority. This is yeah.
Thank you, Brusque. Thank you,
Okay.
Brusque. We're getting a variety of comments in the chat, kind of supporting your ideas and also giving personal experiences, you know,
Yeah.
in another direction. But I'd actually like to pick up another question from the chat that opens a slightly different topic. And the questioner, I think, maybe had to leave already, but her name is Margaret Kahn. I think she's a colleague of yours. And her question is, I'm interested in your take on loan words vis-a-vis standardization ideas. In my experience, people's attitudes vary tremendously depending on the standard language, i.e. with the most different standard language being the most highly valued. So Arabic in Iran, Persian in Turkey and Iraq, etc. Do you have a reaction or a take on that observation?
The most different standard language being the most highly valued. Arabic in Iran, Persian in Turkey and Iraq. So Arabic words used in Persian and Persian loan words in Turkish and Arabic is, I guess, which
Yeah, I think the idea must be a preference for borrowing words rather than cultivating the resources of the native language. Maybe in situations of new naming or finding a common, you know.
Well, for me, what I would value is hearing Kurdish reactions to my suggestions. For instance, the words in the initial, the words and parts of words, morphemes in the my initial talk that I'm, for instance, I'm suggesting that we use gezi as the standard word for broom based on all that. Where part of where this comes from is when I was the editor of the Kurdish service at the Voice of America for 5 years, I would hear this song and dance from people, but everybody would say that their village's dialect is the purest, blah, blah, blah. And the point is that if everybody's going to use words that are only known in their little region, that's not going to enhance communication. The point of the theory of broadcasting, and I think of standardization in general, is you want things to be easily understandable to the widest group of people, to people till the furthest village that they should be able to easily understand. So if you're using a word that you grew up with in your village and no one else is familiar with it, if you want to establish a village, go ahead. But if you want to establish a nation, you have to think differently. So, and the question that I have in my mind with everything that I do, like the little slogan that I see in the air is for creating a nation. What is good practice and what is not good practice? What facilitates that and what is an obstruction to it? And certainly it's understandable that the Turkish government would want to throw a monkey wrench in and prevent Kurds in Iraq and Iran and Syria to understand Kurds in Turkey. Well, we're not here to make the Turkish government happy. I certainly am not. So this is something that the Kurds can do without even needing a government. And you can see a lot of the work is already in progress. A lot of, for instance, in Central Kurdish, it seems to have become standard to use dabinum, even people from Kirkuk and Sleimani, who in their daily conversation would say ebinum. They would write dabinum. So some of the things that I'm suggesting seem already to have been embraced and in use. But I'm curious to see people's reaction to the things that I'm proposing. Do people find them palatable or repulsive, or and what is because it would, I want to be in touch with the Kurds, and I want what I'm doing to be in concert with what the Kurds themselves are trying to do.
Yeah, it looks like Kevin has a question. Would you like to pose?
Yeah, I have a question about the sort of standardization. Do you think that it would ever be possible to have like I guess, one standard over Kurmanji and Sorani, perhaps maybe like an artificial register, but something that's sort of, rather than sort of just like the standardized forms of each dialect, some other sort of dialect which can kind of bridge over them?
Well, so my answer is, first of all, one of the first things that I did in this talk was give you 5 major differences between Kurmanji and Sorani. What I am proposing is that a couple of generations of Kurds who are educated in both Kurmanji and in Sorani and in both the Latin and the Arabic alphabet. And then after that, once we get to that point, what do they want? If the two dialects merge together naturally because people know both of them, then that would be something that we couldn't stop from happening anyway. But the differences between Kurmanji and Sorani make it too different to just create a conglomeration. But also another thing that's very important is for people to have tolerance and curiosity about difference. Instead of saying, if you don't speak like I do, you're wrong, or you're foreign or whatever. I want, that's not nation building. That's divide and conquer. That's making Ankara happy. But the point is, engendering in children as part of the education a respect and tolerance for the other dialects and a curiosity about they're different. How are they different? Show me how they're different. That's because I think that is the basis of a strong, stable future. Because hearing all these songs and dances about my dialect is the purest, so then everybody who doesn't speak like my dialect, which is the majority because you live in a little village, right? So how everybody's supposed to speak like you, but they don't and they won't. So, I mean, I don't want what happened in South Sudan to happen for the Kurds. I want better than that for the Kurds. Yeah, South Sudan had independence, but now everybody's fleeing because of all the bloodshed. I don't want that for the Kurds. They've had enough bloodshed. I want all of these things are my idea of what can lead to a stable future. But a stable future that includes the Kurdish language, not a stable future with all these parents who are speaking to their children in Turkish and in Arabic and in Persian and in English and in French and everything else other than Kurdish. How are these Kurdish children supposed to speak to their grandparents and learn family stories and stuff like that, if the grandparents speak Kurdish and they only speak, you fill in whatever the other language is. But how do we reach these parents and convince them the importance of keeping Kurdish alive and passing it on to the next generation? That's another question that I have to all of you. Though if you're already here, you probably already think like me about it. If you didn't care, you wouldn't be here probably. But anyway.
Well,
Thank you.
that sounds like a rousing conclusion. Unless there are other questions, I think that's the perfect place to wrap things up. Oh, nope, it looks like there's one other question. Yes, Dr. Salah. No?
We can't hear you.
you're muted.
You're muted. Greyman let Nabi. Nabi Houston.
Mm-mm. Nope. Can you unmute?
Yeah, he's still muted.
He is.
Now try.
Is it
Now.
better now?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think I agree with the concept of standardization of the Kurdish language. And I know the obstacle right now mainly is political. But I'm talking about the Iraqi Kurdistan right now. And we have this problem actually with the new generation, because most of the children going to private school, they speak English, not Arabic, not Kurdish even. So in the city I live in, I mean, in the campus I live in, you walk and you hear the children speak English. I have right now 8 students in my center, and they all speak English. This is new generation. We are talking about 18 to 22 years old.
And do they know Kurdish too?
They know Kurdish as spoken language, but not as writing. So the political situation definitely led to where we are right now. And the second issue probably, and I'm glad that Dr. Azad is joining us now, probably he's very close to University of Sulaimaniya people. We have different dictionaries. We are using right now different dictionaries. And I'm talking only about Sorani, not about Kurmanji, because I don't know about Kurmanji, what they do. But about Sorani, we are using different dictionaries, and the media popularize these words. And I think we have the most, the largest amount of Kurdish vocabularies generated in Sorani right now by media, not by academic. So these are the challenges that we are facing here. And I don't know if Dr. Mateen is with us, but I was hoping that we invite him to have a meeting actually about the Kurdish Encyclopedia. Even the Kurdish Encyclopedia has different views on it. So it's more complicated just from academic perspective. The media is doing the leading role in producing words. And definitely there is no academic background for these words. I just wanted to make that comment because I am interested in this issue and I am pushing it, but I am pushing it from at least Sulaimaniya perspective, from Sorani, and I am meeting people from Irani Kurdistan, from Sina, from Mahabad, and we kind of agree together that we have to standardize the Sorani language itself, or the dialect itself, because we don't have this yet. So by passing from Sorani to Kurmanji and then adding another dialect, I think this is just too much for our generation, at least.
But the point is that when it comes to standardizing Kurmanji on the one hand and Central Kurdish on the other hand, by looking at Central Kurdish can be helpful in standardizing Kurmanji. Looking at Kurmanji can be helpful in standardizing Central Kurdish. I'm saying, one of my points is that looking at the other dialect and seeing sometimes that gives clarity, gives guidance as to what form to choose. So that, for instance, Gotin exists both in Kurmanji and Sorani. For somebody learning the language, how do you say to say? Gotin, that's a lot easier than, well, the reality is some people say Wutin, some say Kutin, some say Gotin. Of course, if you're really interested, you have to know that anyway. But for somebody who's just learning, if they use Gotin, which will be widely understood everywhere, that's that can make it a lot easier. That's the sort of examples that I'm giving, and I would welcome people's response. And I don't mean just here. I mean, like going forward, please, if you have some insights and some comments, please contact me and share them. Mustafa,
Yeah.
did you?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I just want to make a few quick remarks here. The idea of having a standard single form of a language is quite modern. I mean, even now, all the mainstream like languages, let it be English, German, or any other languages, they have a standard form, but at local level, everybody speak their own regional dialect. So this is not only a unique issue for Kurdish. As for the pedagogical implications of what you have mentioned, how can we incorporate these efforts of standardization into teaching Kurdish? I think I agree to the idea that including Bahtini's forms as one of the standard, both for Kurmanji and Sorani, would help bring the mutual intelligibility of these two varieties closer without imposing too much resistance from the speakers of both sides, because the further the differences or the intelligibility decreases, the higher resistance we receive from the speaker. So in that regard, using Bahtini as a intermediary point would help, pedagogically speaking, at least. So I know Mustafa Tayhan is here. He's one of the founder of Kurmanji Standardization Committee in Turkey. They are doing some great work in Mesopotamia Center or Mesopotamia Institute in Ahmet. So if we include Bahtini's varieties to the teaching Sorani and Kurmanji, that would, I think, would create a relatively easier pressure on the speakers as to, without really dealing with the issue of mutual intelligibility. Thank you.
I think Bashur had a question or comment. Would you like to put in your 2 cents, Bashur? And maybe not.
Maybe not. Maybe I should say a word. Apart from formal efforts, it looks like social media is playing a major role in the process of standardization of Kurdish dialects, at least putting together different versions, different words for the same objects or same, elements of language. In social media, something that traditionally in the nation building processes, states or governmental organizations, institutes would do, seems to happen on Twitter or Instagram, people who are amateurishly interested in the question, and it's a matter of curiosity. But it looks like social media is creating a Kurdish public sphere that rises above all particularities and creates a space for people to be exposed to different versions. And so that is something happening already, but it certainly requires a kind of professional touch, the likes of Michael's and other experts here among us and beyond, who can give certain guidance and, you know, offer ideas that would help people. I thought, you know, it's an important component of the process, what is happening in the social media. If you have any takes on that, Michael, we'll be happy to hear. Otherwise, thank you very much for the great presentation.
Thank you. And you've invited me back in the spring to talk about lexicography.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I guess it is
May I?
time to wrap up. Oh, wait, another question? I hear a voice. I'm not sure whose it
Dr.
is.
Azad, go ahead.
Oh,
Dr.
yeah.
Azad, yeah,
Yes.
he's muted. He's muted.
Ah. Dr. Azad, can you unmute, please?
Okay, thank you so much for your nice presentation. And here I'm wondering about that. I don't know the name of, not Kevin, before Kevin, someone, he was, I think, from Rojava. He talked about that there is a very big difference between Sorani and Kermanji and Lurri and Kalhuri and the like. So here we as academicians, our job, our task is to find out a best way to standardization of Kurdish language. And I think that Mr. Chyet did a very good job in this case, because he found out the cognate of those words, I mean, the root of those words among different dialects of Kurdish. I do agree with you 100% for putting those, at least, for example, and you said that Kurdish in Bahdini, they say Qissa Akam, we say Qissa Akam, or I studied from the primary school till the university in Kurdish, Sorani Kurdish, by the way, and what we call a standard here. So I never use in my writing. So I say Danusim, Darom, Dachom, Dakam. This is one way of standardization, as you said. By the way, I have one question, Mr. Chyet. Here, I have one question about, we say Hatim Dan. I think that this da is originally, this one is the morpheme of what we call it, a tense morpheme of present tense morpheme, that one. So as I told you, I am 100% with you. However, I have some points from here and there when you are analyzing the words and the cognitive words. For example, when you say can in Central Kurdish, can is ka plus an. So here we have two suffixes. The first suffix is a definite article. The second one is plural morpheme. So
Yeah.
it is not one morpheme. Anyhow, so I have some points from here and there when you talked about when you presented your presentation, seminar or presentation. Another point I found that, for example, the itself in Sorani Kurdish, it is an amalgamation, or what we call it, it is a portmanteau or merge morpheme between both two things here we have. One of them is a tense, another one is aspect. You know, because that is used for past also, past continuous.
Sure. Absolutely.
So here it is not only specified for tense, it is for both tense
Continuation.
and
Continuation.
yes, continuation, imperfect, I mean. So there are, but you found so many things. I was happy with them because I found that some of them can be found in Kalhuri, Ardalani, or in Kermanji. But I found that in Bahdini and Sorani, they are approximate too much to each other. They are near to each other, more than the others. You know, I can understand you are talking about intelligibility, so I can understand everything from media in Badini, even Kag Masoud and Nechirvan and the others. They are from Badini and they can speak easily without having any problem in understanding and addressing, I mean, the audience. So they can speak easily. I don't know why some people they say that there is a very big problem that we make a standardization of field. If academicians like you, they did such a great job and they can find, they can find the roots of the words, the cognate of the words, so they can easily, we can get the standard and we can put them. We can put, I mean, the attempts in the on the right way. I think that I agree with you 100% with your job, with your attempt. It was a very good presentation, a very good conclusion. By the way, bad, we call it Shamshamakwere. Bad,
Yeah.
Shamshamakwere.
How about
Also,
Chakchakula?
Mushroom, yes. Mushroom, we call it Tarchik or Karik. Both of them, they can be used. So if I have enough time, so you can send me I can add something for it. I can, for example, at least words in, I mean, Sorani and at least in Central Kurdish.
Zor
Thank
spas.
you so much again. Sorry for taking your time. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Sure.
Have a nice day. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. I can tell this is a productive and fruitful line of conversation, and it's going to continue. We're so grateful to Dr. Chyet for coming and sharing his views and opening the conversation for us. And I hope we can all continue on this topic. And in 2 weeks, we'll see you back here on November 6th for another topic in Kurdish studies. So thank you very much. And this recording will be on our YouTube later this week. So anybody that missed parts or that wants to see the very useful PowerPoint, it'll be there. Thank you so
very
much.
much. Bye.